is join with us here today, especially those who are behind me that I'll be talking more about here shortly. To begin with, let me point out the obvious. Evil swept across Uvalde yesterday. Anyone who shoots his grandmother in the face has to have evil in his heart. But it is far more evil for someone to gun down little kids. It is intolerable and it is unacceptable for us to have in the state anybody who would kill little kids in our schools. Children are a blessing. God teaches us that. They're filled with laughter, innocence, and joy. Their love is a gift that parents get to unwrap every single day. Parents in Uvalde had that gift taken away from them, stolen by a demented person. Days before yesterday, when these children were at school, some were receiving awards for perfect attendance. These kids will never attend school again. To say the least, Uvalde has been shaken to its core. Families are broken apart. Hearts are forever shattered. All Texans are grieving with the people of Uvalde, and people are rightfully angry about what has happened. Events like this, they tear at the fabric of a community. Our job is to ensure that the community is not going to be ripped apart. All Texans must come together and support the families who have been affected by this horrific tragedy. What they need now more than ever is our love. What they need is uplifting from all of our fellow Texans and all of our fellow Americans. And let me emphasize something that I know you all know. But the reality is, as horrible as what happened, it could have been worse. The reason it was not worse is because law enforcement officials did what they do. They showed amazing courage by running toward gunfire for the singular purpose of trying to save lives. And it is a fact that because of their quick response, getting on the scene, being able to respond to the gunman and eliminate the gunman, they were able to save lives. Unfortunately, not enough. But I want to make sure that everybody knows, all of the law enforcement agencies and groups that are involved and were involved in this process. The Texas Rangers are leading the investigation, and they are supported by the Texas Department of Public Safety Highway Patrol, the Texas Department of Public Safety Criminal Investigative Division, DPS Aircraft, DPS Intelligence Counter and Terrorism Division, DPS Crime and Victim Support. They're also supported by the Texas Division of Emergency Management, the FBI, as well as multiple federal partners, including the DEA, ATF, HSI, and Border Patrol. And then, of course, the valiant local officials the Uvalde Sheriff's Department, Uvalde Police Department, Uvalde Independent School District Police, Uvalde County Constables, Uvalde Mayor, the County Judge, Uvalde District Attorney's Office, local public works and surrounding police department, and the San Antonio Police and Fire Department also. Let me walk you through some of the facts of what has happened. There's been a lot of things that have been said. Some are correct, some are incorrect. Let me tell you the best information that we have at this time, understanding, very importantly, that this is an ongoing investigation, and ongoing investigations often reveal new information as those investigations progress. The first thing that happened was that the gunman shot his grandmother in the face. She then contacted police. The gunman fled, and as he was fleeing, he had an accident just outside of the elementary school, and he ran into the school. Officers with the Consolidated Independent School District, they approached the gunman and engaged with the gunman at that time. The gunman then entered a back door and went down 2 short hallways and then into a classroom on the left-hand side. The gunman entered into that classroom, and the classroom was connected internally to another classroom. Border Patrol, Consolidated ISD officers, police, sheriffs, and DPS officers converged on that classroom, and a Border Patrol officer killed the gunman. As I said, Texas Rangers are leading the investigation, joined by federal, state, and local law enforcement officials. At this time, we know that 19 children have lost their lives. 2 faculty members lost their lives. In addition to that, there are 17 people who are injured, but their injuries are not life-threatening. All family members of all of these students and faculty members have been contacted and informed about the circumstances. Officials are working with parents to ensure that their parents are going to be able to see their children. Parents should contact victim services at the county fairplex. We know that there are parents still striving to make a connection. All parents are welcome and urged to contact victim services at the county fairplex. The gunman was 18 years old and reportedly a high school dropout. Reportedly, there has been no criminal history identified yet. He may have had a juvenile record, but that is yet to be determined. There was no known mental health history of the gunman. He used one weapon, which was an AR-15, using 223 rounds. There was no meaningful forewarning of this crime other than what I'm about to tell you. As of this time, the only information that was known in advance was posted by the gunman on Facebook approximately 30 minutes before reaching the school. The first post was to the point of, he said, "I'm going to shoot my grandmother." The second post was, "I shot my grandmother." The third post, maybe less than 15 minutes before arriving at the school, was, "I'm going to shoot an elementary school." I mentioned that during the shootout that took place at the school, in addition to the students and the faculty. There were 3 officers who were injured who were all remain in good condition. 1 deputy sheriff lost a daughter in that school. Before coming out here, we had a long discussion with law enforcement at all levels. We had a discussion with community leaders, elected officials. And I asked the sheriff and others an open-ended question and got the same answer from the sheriff as well as from the mayor of Uvalde. The question was, what is the problem here? And they were straightforward and emphatic. They said, we have a problem with mental health illness in this community. And then they elaborated on the magnitude of the mental health challenges that they are facing in the community and the need for more mental health support in this region. I want to make sure everybody understands the mental health services that are available at this time, with me making one clarifying point in advance that I'm going to redouble down in the aftermath. Whenever anything as shocking and extraordinary and disturbing as this event occurs, there is an urgent need for everybody affected to access mental health. I cannot be more emphatic than saying with great urgency, everybody in this community, I mean everybody, the victims, the families, family members, friends, the law enforcement involved, but the entire community is in utter shock about this. Some physical wounds that were sustained by the officers, they're going to heal in the coming days. The mental and emotional wounds are far harder to see and last far longer. The state of Texas, working with federal and local officials and agencies, we're going to be here for a long, long time. And one key point that we will focus on is making sure that everybody in this community has the access they need for as long as they need it to address with the mental and emotional health care needs that they have. I want to list various agencies and make sure these are made available to the public. The mental health services currently available are from victim services from across the area, from federal, state, and local levels, including the Family Resource Center at the Uvalde County Fairplex. Schools have crisis teams at the Uvalde Civic Center. They provide wraparound services for families who are affected. The Texas Child Mental Health Consortium, created by the state legislature in 2019, is available to assist. The Bluebonnet Children's Advocacy Center is available to provide services for children. The Texas Health and Human Services Commission is on site and will be available for ongoing provision of services. The Texas Education Agency is providing supplemental counseling services. The Texas Department of Public Safety Counseling is providing counseling services for law enforcement. And the FBI is also bringing in mental health services for law enforcement. It cannot be overemphasized the importance of law enforcement officers, all of them, seeking out and obtaining this mental health counseling. The District Attorney's Office for Victim Services has a phone number available for all victims, and candidly, the entire community, in a way, is a victim here. And I was provided their number to give out to you publicly. This is the number for the District Attorney's Office for Victim Services. The number is 830-278-2916. And at this time, I will pass the mic to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Sit down.
You're out of line and an embarrassment.
Sit down and don't play this stuff.
Shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a bitch that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue. It's on assholes like you. Why don't you get out of here?
And leave.
There are family members. There are family members who are crying as we speak. There are family members whose hearts are broken. There's no words that anybody shouting can come up here and do anything to heal those broken hearts. We all, every Texan, every American has a responsibility where we need to focus not on ourselves and our agendas. We need to focus on the healing and hope that we can provide to those who have suffered unconscionable damage to their lives and loss of life. We need all Texans to, in this one moment in time, put aside personal agendas, think of somebody other than ourselves, think about the people who are hurt, and help those who have been hurt. And this time, Lieutenant Governor will speak.
I was just about to say that there will be plenty of time to discuss and analyze what happened yesterday and do everything that we can within our power to hopefully prevent it from happening again. But now is a time, people watching around the world, in this country, in this state, to focus on these families, as the governor just said. Right now, we need to put our arms around the families of these victims, the students and the teachers. This is not a partisan issue. This is not a political issue. This is an unimaginable moment that will impact the lives of those who lost their children and those who survived, the adults and the teachers, the men and women of law enforcement who were there. We are better than this as a country. We are better than this. These types of crimes, when you see children killed, go to the very core of all of us who have children or grandchildren. We can't imagine the pain that these families are going through. We saw it 4 years ago in Santa Fe. So can we not be a nation that can stand together for at least a day or a week or a month? My gosh. To put these families first and everything else second? My gosh. know, we live in a time, I said this yesterday, when people are at each other's throats everywhere we turn. Whether it's on the internet or an Oscar stage or two coaches arguing or in the political world or the media world. Who are we as an American people? Who are we? We all have to do our part. All do our part to make us a better people and a better nation. Evil will always walk among us. And in times like this, I've seen it. The governor's seen it. The speaker's seen it. The senators have seen it. The attorney general's seen it. In these other shootings, Sutherland Springs, El Paso, Odessa, Santa Fe, it's God that brings a community together. It's God that heals a community. It's God that heals a shattered and broken heart. And if we don't turn back as a nation to understanding what we were founded upon and what we were taught by our parents and what we believe in, then these situations will only get worse and happen more often. So, no matter what your thoughts are today, pray for these families. Pray for this community. Give us wisdom. Give us wisdom. But right now, let's focus on the families. They deserve that. They need our love. They need our prayers. Thank you, Governor.
And now the Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it. Mayor, I'm sorry you had to witness that outburst. Now is not the time to politicize pain and suffering. This time of year should be the happiest time in a child's life. Summertime, getting out of school, enjoying your family and your friends. And instead, this community is faced with an unspeakable tragedy of which there are no words. There are no words to ease the pain and suffering and the anger in this community. I do want to reiterate what the governor said about the mental health of this community. This will take many, many years of pain and suffering and counseling. And your mental health is like any other health. It must be treated, it must be diagnosed, it must be talked about. And the legislature, when we reconvene, we will have a long, very robust discussion about mental health like we always have, and we'll continue to support mental health in this state, and especially rural mental health. Like the sheriff said, and like the mayor said, every community has mental health needs, and they must be addressed. And this crisis is another reiteration of a mental health crisis we have in this state. I also want to thank the law enforcement for their work, DPS, Border Patrol, sheriffs, police officers, both locally and the school district. I believe one school district's police officer lost his wife in the shooting, was there on the scene. And the governor mentioned sheriff's deputy losing a child in that building as well. Just unspeakable tragedy to this whole community. And the mental health of our law enforcement is crucial in these times. And it's okay for them to say that something's wrong as well. I do my deer hunting here in Uvalde County. It's a beautiful community with beautiful people. And all we can say is how tragic this is, and the support the state will show and will continue to show. And we just appreciate your resiliency, and let us know how we can help here at the state of Texas.
Thank you. And now the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Steve Mccraw.
Thank you, Governor. On behalf of the sheriff and chiefs of police, the department's been asked to go through a timeline of the facts as we know the investigation right now. It's preliminary, this information, but we'll provide out as much information as we can. First, as already reported, Salvador Ramos was responsible for the horrific attack and killing of 19 school-aged children and 2 adults. He's 18 years old, as previously reported. He was dropped out of school. He had no criminal history that we've been able to find or detect at this particular point. He lived with his grandmother, Celia, who is 66 years old. On March 17th, Ramos purchased a semi-automatic rifle at a local sporting goods store. On March 18th, he purchased 375 rounds of ammunition for that rifle. On March 20th, he purchased another semi-automatic rifle at that same local store. The FBI has been able to find information on his Facebook account that the governor already provided you information on. At approximately 11 o'clock, he announced, on Facebook, a message that he was going to shoot his grandmother. He shot his grandmother. He re-reported that he had shot her. And after that, he reported that he was going to a school to attack it. And he didn't identify the specific school. He did say elementary at that point in time. But the timeline is anywhere from 11 to 11:30. His mother reported him to the police department when she was able to run across the street to a neighbor and get help. And she was medevaced to San Antonio in critical condition at this point, but she's still alive. The subject, Ramos, at that point in time, used her vehicle, his grandmother's vehicle. He was living at their residence since March of 2022. Used her vehicle to drive approximately 2.29 miles, which is about a block and a half away from the school, Robb Elementary School. He crashed the vehicle at that point in time. He exited with a backpack. He took a rifle with him, one rifle. It was a Daniel Defense that he had previously purchased and had mentioned. He went towards the west side of the campus, which is a back door. But as he was approaching, as the governor mentioned earlier, there was a brave Consolidated Independent School District resource officer that approached him, engaged him, and at that time, gunfire was not exchanged, but the subject was able to make it into the school, as the governor reported. He went down a hallway, turned right, then turned left, and there was two classrooms that were adjoining, and that's where the carnage began. As he was shooting, when the shooting began, we had Uvalde police officers arrive on scene, and along with the Consolidated Independent School District officers, immediately breached, because as we know in officers, every second's a life. They breached it, engaged the active shooter, and continued to keep him pinned down in that location, afterwards, until after a tactical team could be put together, comprised of Border Patrol agents on the front end, some members of their BORTAC unit, which is a SWAT team for Border Patrol. Also, there was a Zavala County deputy that got into the stack, and two Uvalde police officers. They breached the classroom door. They went in. They engaged Ramos and killed him at the scene. That covers it, Governor. One thing I'd like to say, though, and you hit the nail on the head, is that in the profession of law enforcement, it is a profession. What looks right and how we measure ourselves is the absence of crime and disorder. Obviously, this is a situation we failed in the sense that we didn't prevent this mass attack. But I can tell you those officers that arrived on the scene and put their lives in danger, they saved other kids. They kept them pinned down. And we're very proud of that. At the same time, we're always looking to get better and look at anything that might have been out there. We've yet to find a clue, whether it's social media or other indicators that might have given us any type of idea that he was about to do something like this. It gives us an opportunity to prevent it because, as we know, the overriding priority of you, certainly the legislature in Texas and the people of Texas, is that it's all about prevention. Prevent the next mass attack. And thank you for your leadership, and Speaker and Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the Superintendent for the Consolidated Independent School District, Hal Harrell.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your support. I appreciate your team coming and speaking to us and providing the services and resources that you have. As superintendent, I could never imagine a day like yesterday. End of school, award ceremonies, the time of a second, third, or fourth grader's life at that point. It was a senseless and tragic event, and this magnitude in our community is heartbreaking. It really is. We have had a lot of support here from our community, surrounding counties, surrounding districts, and all over the state, and I appreciate you for thinking of us and sending that support. I have to relay the heartbreak of our teachers at Robb campus. I met with them this morning, but as I looked across that room, there was a group of heroes in that room. If it weren't for them, along with the law enforcement that came, that were willing to cradle their kids, get them out of the classroom when it was safe, when they were guided, and the trust our kids had in their teachers. That says volumes for our staff here in Uvalde. They are heroes. They did heroic things yesterday, and they are always very humble, but they are truly humble heroes. Yesterday, we lost 2 teachers. These 2 teachers, I would say, are the cornerstone of that campus to some great degree. They are 2 beautiful souls. They have taught on that campus for many years. They have kids in our district, and they poured their heart and soul into what they did in educating our kids in Uvalde. 19 students, 19 precious students who came to school yesterday to enjoy the day, to enjoy the award assembly. And as I look at their pictures, you can just tell by their angelic smile that they were loved, that they loved coming to school, and they were just precious individuals. This is a difficult time for everybody. We are hurting. We have been cut deep here in our community. We will move forward. It's going to take some time moving forward. While our faith has been shaken, we ask you to continue to pray for these families, these kids in our community, and our teachers. I am a product of Uvalde. I'm born and raised here. I've worked for this district for 30 years. And never thought I would be sitting in front of you doing this today. But please, pray for our teachers, pray for our community, and we will move forward. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. We'll take a few questions. So the ability of an 18-year-old to buy a long gun has been in place in the state of Texas for more than 60 years. And think about during the time over the course of that 60 years, we have not had episodes like this. And why is it that for the majority of those 60 years, we did not have school shootings? And why is it that we do now? The reality is I don't know the answer to that question. However, what I do know in talking to the leaders here, as well as leaders in other locations around the state, and that is one thing that has substantially changed, is the status of mental health in our communities. What I do know is this, and that is we as a state, we as a society, need to do a better job with mental health. Anybody who shoots somebody else has a mental health challenge, period. We as a government need to find a way to target that mental health challenge and do something about it. Director Mccraw will have the best information on that.
We're in the process of doing the crime scene right now. The first one being the school, the second being the vehicle, and the third, the grandmother's residence. I can tell you where it's a detailed process, so I can't answer that. But for right now, we believe that all the children were shot and killed by Ramos. We did see some, and I think one was of a concern, and that concern was, relayed to allegedly, we haven't confirmed it yet, to someone in California who didn't report it. And we're in the process of working with the FBI right now to make sure she's interviewed and find out more about it. There may be other clues out there right now that we're not aware of. This is a preliminary part of the investigation, and we're going to scour everything to find anything that what could have indicated in some way, shape, or form that this individual was a threat to the community. None at all. In fact, this is, we're astounded at the beginning of the investigation because there's usually something out there, but right now, it is as that reported on the timeline. If we find out something else, we'll provide that information.
So I'm going to answer in part, but we also have the TEA Commissioner, Mike Mccraw, with us, who may be able to shed additional light. But here's the information that we know, and you pointed out SB 11, listen, as you know, but others may not. People need to understand that in the aftermath of the Santa Fe shooting, I signed 17 laws to address school safety. And one of them dealt with threat assessment and preparation for threat assessment. And there are certain standards that schools are required to comply with to make sure that they are addressing threat assessments. I have no information as we speak at this particular time about the status of this particular elementary school or the ISD about what the status was concerning threat assessments. However, to make sure that your broader question is answered sufficiently, Mike, you want to come up? The person coming up is Mike Mccraw, who is the commissioner for the Texas Education Agency.
So there's significant appropriations provided to ensure that the local school systems around the state have resources for this. One of the components of Senate Bill 11 was a school safety allotment. There was additional upfront funding for that. The Texas School Safety Center and our agency work in collaboration to provide technical assistance and training to school district leaders, counseling team leaders, others, to ensure that the threat assessment protocols and these procedures, including threat response plans and the operational multi-hazard plans, are practiced on a recurring basis. So there have been essentially fairly significant efforts to bolster those managerial practices and these detective or preventative practices in schools all over the state of Texas. We will continue to do more. After any incident like this, of course, you reflect on lessons learned to ensure that we can prevent this kind of situation in schools going forward.
Yeah, if I can just add to that.
One sec. I'll call on you next. 1 second.
If I can just add to that briefly, in 19, the House and Senate worked together, put $100 million into trying to give the schools all the tools that they needed to try to protect the student. The Marshals program, the Guardian program to arm teachers where schools want it. We left a lot of those programs optional up to the parents and the school boards and the school districts. And they're doing the best they can. And you're always going to have, again, no matter what you do, there's going to be someone to find another area that's vulnerable. But the legislature did act. The governor signed those bills, but we can and need to do more. And in the area of mental health, we've also been working on that as well, but need to do more. We've got to, in our smaller schools, where we can get down to one entrance might be one of those solutions. If you'd taken 3 more minutes to find an open door, police were there pretty quickly. But this school district has been doing a really good job in trying to protect their students, and those teachers died yesterday protecting their students. And this is a continued work for us.
Go ahead. So first, with regard to yesterday, I was actually in Taylor County responding to a different disaster, a disaster of fires that had ripped through Taylor County and destroyed 20 homes. And that is when I learned about the shooting that was taking place pretty much at that time here. On the way back to Austin, I stopped and let people know that I could not stay, that I needed to go, and I wanted them to know what happened and get back to Austin so that I could continue my collaboration with Texas law enforcement to make sure that all the needs were being met here in the Uvalde area. As far as future plans are concerned, listen, I'm living moment to moment right now. My heart, my head, and my body are in Uvalde right now, and I'm here to help the people who are hurting.
I can't. It's going to be within a minute, like 40 minutes or something, within an hour, but I don't want to give you a particular timeline. But bottom line is that law enforcement was there. They did engage immediately. They did contain them in the classroom, and they put a tactical stack together, in a very orderly way, and of course breached and assaulted the individual. The initial engagement? No, I mean, yeah, it was just, it confronted him and wanted to find out, because he see the report, heard the accident, and was out trying to check on that particular crash when he saw it. So he followed him right in immediately, okay, and when rounds were exchanged. And of course, then also we had 2 Uvalde police officers previously described that went in and was involved in also the shooting with the subject and were wounded. And of course, they were also responsible for containing him in that area.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't know where he was in the community, but obviously in the Uvalde area, because they got there so quickly and in force. And of course, I'll let them answer that question. But they were there in force, and of course, they were, importantly, they had some members of their tactical team there on the Vortec team, and they took the lead on that stack. But I'll defer to, I think I have a Border Patrol uniformed.
Thank you. So first off, the U.S. Border Patrol Del Rio sector has a station in Uvalde. So we have about 150 or so agents that are permanently assigned to Uvalde. We also have several agents in other stations that choose to live here in this community as well. So we had folks that came from off-duty. We had folks that came from training. We had folks that were in the field and responded. So a multitude, some 80 in total, Border Patrol agents responded. So as to where that particular individual came from, don't have that yet. The investigation will bear out, but we have a large presence permanently here in Uvalde.
Did you?
Not going to release his name just yet.
Go ahead. We began talking about it in there. I'll just tell you one thing that we talked about, which is something we've heard in some other regions of Texas also, and that is in approximately maybe as much as a 40-county region around the area where we gather right now, there is no mental health hospital, and there's a shortage of beds for mental health in this region. If someone is suicidal, if someone has a mental health problem, they oftentimes would have to go to someplace like San Antonio. And with the growing population in this region, with the profound mental health challenges that were discussed with us, one takeaway I had was that there is greater need for a physical mental health care facility in this region. But we know that buildings don't treat people, people treat people. And so there needs to be more personnel, more strategies, a greater understanding by the mental health care provider community about what the needs are, and they will be best equipped to know the best way to provide, or let's say meet those needs. Bottom line is this, and that is, I think it's a fair statement, that legislative leaders understand about health challenges in the more rural settings in the state of Texas, and we have a genuine commitment to help address those mental health care challenges. It's one of those issues that was widely discussed in the last several sessions, in particular in the 2019 session. And pretty much every issue was raised by one legislator or another about potential ways to address shootings like this. And the consensus arose around those 17 bills that I did sign, that they hardened schools, they made schools safer, they addressed mental health, and issues like that were the solutions that were agreed upon by legislators at that time. And that is going to be the similar approach that I perceive legislators will continue to focus on. We consider that what we did in 2019 to be one of the most profound legislative sessions, not just in Texas, but we've seen in any state in addressing school shootings. That said, to be clear, we all understand our work is not done. Our work must continue. And we will continue to discuss with legislators about all the potential avenues and pathways that we can take to make sure that schools will be even safer going forward. And I know people like to try to oversimplify this. Let's talk about some real facts. And that is, there are, quote, real gun laws in Chicago. There are, quote, real gun laws in New York. There are real gun laws in California. I hate to say this, but there are more people who were shot every weekend in Chicago than there are in schools in Texas. And we need to realize that people who think that, well, maybe if we could just implement tougher gun laws, it's going to solve it. Chicago and LA and New York disprove that thesis. And so if you're looking for a real solution, Chicago teaches that what you're talking about is not a real solution. Our job is to come up with real solutions that we can implement. So the last thing first, and that is altogether, we allocated more than $600 million, so more than $500 million to address school safety. As it concerns the first parts of your question, the answer is, with the laws that we passed in 2019, which is 3 years ago, all those measures that you were talking about were included in those laws. Let me give you several examples. An entire platform that was addressed is what's called school hardening or hardening schools. Some of those strategies reduce the number of entrances. Other strategies provide things like school marshals or having DPS officers or others fill out their paperwork in schools so that there will be a law enforcement presence in schools. They involve different types of strategies that will should make it more difficult for a shooter to get into a school. That said, I can tell you what we all agree upon. We're all going to go back and look at both exactly what was passed, any shortcoming in what was passed, any shortcoming in implementation. I want you to know also that included in those laws were requirements by school districts across the state of Texas to work with the School Safety Commission to make sure that all the strategies would be used and employed and tested, including active shooter strategies for schools to be ready, to be prepared to employ as needed. And so, yes, from pretty much every angle, it was debated. And let me go back in time. This is something where I began working up the governor's plan to respond to this a year in advance. And legislators had an entire year to be looking at that, to be debating that, to be getting prepared for that. Then I made it an emergency item during the session, which meant that everyone was going to be focusing on it, and they did. So my point is saying that, and that is that this took the time, effort, and mental involvement of all legislators during the course of that session to put what they consider to be the best solutions on the table. Many of them were adopted, some were not, but we adopted what we consider to be the best plans that session. Again, we will always, and especially in this coming session, evaluate what more needs to be done in our schools to make them even safer.
I understand that. We're looking at now we're getting the surveillance video, so we can go frame by frame and track that every minute. So that's part of obviously the investigation, and I'd wait until we've completed that part before we provide that information. Yeah, right now, I don't want to say because I think we have an answer, but we haven't confirmed it yet. No, he was not. He was not chased. No, not at all. All the victims have been identified, and all the notifications have been made. Yes, there's an ongoing recovery team. We've got certainly a company of Texas Rangers with forensic background are conducting it, and then we've got the FBI's evidence response team, and of course ATF is helping as well.
Can we get you to speak up a little bit?
No, there's limited information. We don't see a motive or catalyst right now. We're looking for it, scouring, and we'll continue to do so. They were public, like anything else. They were out there, and he was trying to communicate. And of course, some of the information is we're going to have to continue to do interviews with people that he'd been in contact with. So we're not even close to being done yet. I can't comment on that right now.
So, and very interestingly, in the meeting that we had before coming out here, I raised that exact issue because we talked about mental health. And to me, someone who is as demented as it takes to kill little kids, it goes beyond, seems to me, a mental health issue. I mean, that is the sheer face of evil itself. And so, listen, I'm not a doctor. I can't classify these things. And I don't know the extent to which mental health would be able to address someone who has the challenges that they would shoot their grandmother and then shoot and kill all these babies, all these young kids. Kind of what was pointed out at the time in our discussion earlier is there could have been a time earlier in his life when it was a more typical mental health issue that could have been addressed. I don't have any information about that, and maybe others don't either, but is there a difference between a mental health challenge that can be addressed and evil? I don't know. It's a big... And this. And that oversimplifies things. Like, you don't want to oversimplify this, but to just say it's evil seems to oversimplify it. Well, it obviously is a meaningful characterization, and the point is this: if you know someone more evil, I want to see what they did, but I consider this person to have been pure evil. Go ahead. Say it again. Well, it's the answer that I was given to this gentleman back here earlier, and that is it's something that we did talk specifically in our meeting before coming out here, and that is, for one, not just this community, but the surrounding geographic area is lacking in a mental health hospital or other physical facility. And there literally are either no beds or inadequate beds to address those with mental health challenges. And when you look at the population base, and perhaps a growing population base in this geographic region, an issue that we will be taking up is going to be what ways do we address the mental health issues? Does it include a physical facility such as a mental health hospital? If so, how large would it be? Things like that. So there are many issues for us to consider and evaluate and to work on addressing. Speaker Phelan wants to add more to that.
I'd like to add to that. So in the last special session, we actually appropriated about $150 million in ARPA funds for the Children's Mental Health Consortium to partner with campuses across the state of Texas, higher education, four-year institution, two-year institutions, to have a mental health professional on campus to contract with local ISDs to make certain. This is mainly a COVID issue of mental health for children coming out of COVID, but it's mental health across the board for any child who wants to meet with a professional, which is a challenge. I'm from rural Texas. It's a challenge to have those professionals in your community. We also appropriated $500 million for rural broadband to make certain communities out in rural Texas have high-speed internet to where they can have a consultation online with a mental health professional, not just in the state of Texas, because we passed another piece of legislation that said you can meet with professionals outside the state of Texas. And so the telehealth, telemedicine situation come out of COVID, rural broadband were addressed late in October of this past year, and many of those programs are being rolled out right now.
We have other ways of addressing it and other funds available for it. So I'm not exactly clear on your question, but I think I have the gist of it well enough to be able to answer it in this way, and that is this: we will all consider the best strategies for schools to employ, but importantly, we do that in conjunction by working with schools. We won't be imposing policies on schools without working with them. We need ISDs and schools and school leaders and school safety professionals at the table for that discussion purposes if we are going to achieve the best standards that are possible. Thank you all.
start clearing, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, folks, if we can conduct the rest of the business outside, please.
Everybody's clear out. Everybody's clearing out.